Hello and a pleasant good evening to one and all. I would like to wish everyone a happy new year, 2024. This is another episode, the first episode for the year, actually. And as you know, A Few Good Men has been facilitating a program which is run by the Parent Teachers Association of the Anglican High School. And that program is Fathers Knows Best. And previously, we had advertised a topic where we would be, we had planned, sorry, to discuss the whole issue of missing persons report that we see frequently popping up on social media. However, due to some cancellation, we had to change tonight's or this evening's discussion. And definitely, we're going to be discussing or having an overview of what transpired over the Christmas season, especially some issues that have popped up and continues to remain glaring and a stain on our society as if you view it that way. So, without further ado, I will introduce my guest in the back end. First off, I'd like to introduce Monty. Welcome to the program.
Good day, Karan. Good day to the listening public. Happy New Year to everyone. I I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everybody a really prosperous and productive New Year, 2024. Right? Health and strength.
All right. But Eddie, technology could always surprise us at the last minute. I've been having some technical issues leading up to the start.
Yeah. It happens. It
Very
happens.
unpredictable.
This man that make it, I expect.
All right, but anyway, we seem to be going smooth, so I hope it stays that way.
Okay.
All right, so our next guest, no stranger to the program, he's appeared last year and he's now reappearing again. We bring Brent onto the platform. Mr. McIntosh, how are you, sir?
And not too bad, Mr. Campbell, and happy new year to you and to all our viewers out there. It's a pleasure to be back, and I want to wish everyone a wonderful 2024 as well. And looking forward to discussing, some really crucial topics with you all. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right, and finally, my good friend Yusuf. How are you, Yusuf? Happy New
I'm
Year.
great. As they say, thank God for life, and as they say, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all, and us all, and trust that this year be a blessed, productive one, and helpful one to all.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Well, let's kick off this evening discussion. Unfortunately, like I said, prior to had some technical issues that surprised me. I didn't expect it, but with technology, we have those issues popping up. But anyway, so this evening, first off, I'll just give everyone the opportunity to, just say a few words as to, how was the holiday season. And as we lead into the discussion this evening, um, I've been out probably once over the holidays, and I've noticed, you know, some things that are just it didn't sit well with my stomach or with my inner being. So, Monty, I don't know if you want to lead off with that discussion. How was your holidays, and what are some of the observations that you have made that you would like to discuss this evening?
Well, my holiday was pretty quiet, I must say. It was, if I had to describe what my holiday entailed, I would say very family oriented, right? And I say that from the standpoint that most of my time was designated to spend with the the wife and children. Um, in terms of you know highlights, but it so happens that around the holidays is my anniversary as well. So I also celebrated 10 years of marriage on Boxing Day. So the wife and I also celebrated that on the 26th. So we didn't do much. We did go, we, did our own little celebration, and then we decided to indulge in by attending what was the name of the party again? Something in Pier 57, but it was a oldies party. Our type, well, I don't want to say call myself necessarily old, but what music that you can appreciate by Grenada's best DJ. So that was our highlight in terms of thing. And we started the year as a family as well. We went to church on Old Year's night into New Year's morning. We went to church. So there's an opportunity to start the year as a family with the family. In terms of observations, I would say I'm not somebody that likes to frequent town when it comes to sorry, Christmas, because it's normally on a Christmas Eve. It's so hectic. They try to stay away from town, but sometimes you can't help but ending up in that space. And I must say, from my observation, it was a bit of a what I observed. It was somewhat of a rowdy atmosphere, you know. Even so, I thought at first that because of how the Christmas Eve fell on Sunday. So I thought technically the unofficial Christmas Eve would have been Saturday, right? Um, so I didn't think there would have been a lot of people in town on Christmas Eve, which was a Sunday. But to my surprise, when I was passing through town on Sunday, I felt there was a lot of young people in town Christmas Eve. You know, there was droves of them, and even I guess they would have had activities. And because where I live right in town. Um, I what bothered me a lot was that the fact that there was so many young persons that evidently were of school age, school children to be exact, and I found that they were out some very inappropriate hours. You know, wee hours of the morning, wee hours of the night. Some of the things that seemingly I can't say with 100% certainty, but in my observation, based on behavior and body language, as is as though they were engaging in whether it's drinking alcohol, smoking, and you know things along those lines. And it just takes me back to what are we doing as parents, because as a parent I know I have standards and I have limits when it comes to my children. If they are to go into town, there's a time they're supposed to be back home by, right? And so much so I don't even let my children enter into town at certain hours unless I'm present. So in the scheme of things, I think that was my observation in a nutshell. And I don't know. Let me give other persons a chance maybe to say their piece.
Well, what I would say for me, it was quiet. It was more one of reflection in terms of it's the end of a year, beginning of another, and family-wise, it was a quiet time. As you know, I don't celebrate Christmas this year, but I was out and about all year's night. It's been a while too. Children wanted to see family. But again, because I haven't been out in such a while, I was curious as to as Monty mentioned, the level of what seemingly to be young children. Could be teenage because they could also just finish school but still look young, but there wasn't much adults around. I guess we always caught up in their own activities. But outside of that, it was a quiet one, and hopefully this year is much more productive, and from my point of view, a healthier one. Yeah.
Well, for me, it was pretty traditional. I've been for years. I like the preparations in terms of getting the place cleaned up. Preparing to host some guests on Christmas Day and New Year's and all that. Traditional in the sense too that I remember what I did as a teenager when we would go into town. So I did allow my kids to go, but of course there were parenting rules. The specific times you need to be back, and that was well coordinated, and there were no problems there. And the reason why this was important, and that's from a positive side, is because as a parent you have to sort of ensure that your rules, your guidelines are always adhered to, and if not, then they must say, well, this was the reason why I didn't get home at 6 o'clock, or call or say something. One of the things I did that I haven't done in a while, well, at all years, New Year's Eve, the kids wanted to go to the quarantine point where I think they have the lights, and then you can get to see some fireworks at midnight. So they thought they were going on their own, which they went. But at the last minute, we decided as friends, we just gonna pop up there, and I could have seen the disappointment on their faces when they saw us. But after a while, I mean, they were happy we were there. so from my observations on the negatives, is that it's the comfort level. I mean, we were teenagers, and we had different peer groups. We would go hang out, and then sometimes you were influenced negatively, but you always remember, what you were taught. So you always went back to what you know is the right thing. But I struggle with the comfort level, and not just around this time, but I'm talking even sometimes I'm sitting in Tanti looking at the kids training and all that, a football match, and there's this comfort level of school children in school clothes that can use obscenities like with ease. Imagine in your days you mentioned an obscene word in front of ad, they would take you apart. But that is my, apart from the smoking and the consumption of alcohol by the young ones, and that's a major issue. I mean, that deserves a whole topic. But it's the comfort level of the teenagers now to use obscenities in the presence of adults, and one of the things I noticed is that sometimes adults don't even say anything. I still try to at least respond, and try to say, well, this isn't right. This is, you shouldn't be doing that. And the thing is, what the problem this causes, right, is that they get more and more comfortable, right? And sometimes it could be for multiple reasons. I mean, maybe something we can discuss, but I think that was my bigger challenge. But I know to say this comes back to some form of parental challenges, I would say. But I mean, in terms of the season, it was it was really quiet. It was traditional for me as usual. Cooked a lot, love that stuff, So, but again, I'm hoping we can discuss issues and get feedback and see how we can try to make a difference somehow. So that's it from me. Thank you, guys.
Okay, you touched on a point. I've also observed that myself, and I'm thinking to myself, do I intervene and risk getting into some back and forth with these young kids where I look stupid as well, or should I just leave it alone? And I think that's the internal battle that I go through, and I'm sure everyone here goes through it. Another point is that we have some parents who will be they will have a lot to say to you if you do speak to their children in a way that they deem to be disrespectful. Even though you're trying to correct them. I've seen that happen. That happened to me on multiple occasions. So what do we do?
Yeah.
I throw that up. What do we do?
Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's a really thin line between trying to sort of correct, as you mentioned. But I think it burns my stomach, a lot when I get it from females, because I heard it from a lot of female students one time in Tanti. And I think, yeah, the guys is tough, but I think for the females, that's when I said, guys, I mean, just picture yourself looking at yourself in a mirror. Is that really what you want to portray of yourself? And they got quiet, but the boys continued, which I sort of expected, right? And I almost was tempted to go on preaching that it's a tough world out there, especially for women. And I hope people don't take this the wrong way, right? Your chances of surviving when you start going on that road of, and whether it's peer pressure or not, it's a tough one. You never know who's listening to you, right? You might walk into a job interview, 2 years down the road, and then, you might be surprised that the person who you're going to the interview with has happened to be the same parent that was correcting you, all right, or the same person that was correcting you. But I personally, you still need to say something because they need to be reminded. But again, it's a thin line, right? If it becomes a confrontational situation, then sometimes, you will be the mature one that that you just need to walk away, right? And I'm sure in the schools, the principals, the teacher consistently reinforcing that you have to create and ensure you represent your school, your family name when you're out there, in public. And sometimes it may fall on deaf ears, but I think it's still worth the sort of highlighting by a concerned caring parent if you're in the presence. It may be distasteful for you as a parent. Sometimes that's why you say something about it, and sometimes you generally care about what happened to them, right? But my thing is, you just never know, and I've seen those situations so many times. It's a cruel world out there when it comes to surviving, whether economically, or you do not want to ruin your chances, because all it takes is just one sort of occurrence of these things that can be a career or a life change, whether it's negative or positive situation for you.
And if I may add also, what you find, again, this first is a reminder for myself as parents, we fall short in terms of, and this is not about, hopefully don't come across negative or misunderstood. It's not about bringing back yesteryear or when we were younger, because we're not that old, you know. This is about instilling or trying to maintain that level of value, or values, as they would say. So, for example, many a time we as they would say, pass the buck. So, in essence, in terms of us being parents, we're not parenting as we should. We want to be more of the children friend, or we want to be hip or acceptable. You know, it's easier to give them a device or give them a phone or send them somewhere versus us doing what we need to do. You know, and too often it's a case where instead of we instilling that level of discipline, we asking somebody else to do it. We might send them by a neighbor, or as far as we're concerned, we're so caught up doing our own do. We going out and work and come back home. And as far as we're concerned, we're providing already. So it's easy to tune into the TV or go and do your own thing versus just spending a little time with the children to do a refresher in terms of respect, ask them how it was the day, and so forth. So it's many a time left up to us, because what we're seeing is the result. We need to address the symptom. Why are they being disrespectful? Why are they using certain languages? Why they don't care and free spirited in the context of not being concerned of the consequences down the road, as you mentioned, whether it be job, lifestyle, or whatever. So at time we need to also internalize and see how can I be a better parent. If I'm not, if I'm fine, maybe I need assistance from a family member, a friend, or somebody who's been in it. You know, so that's my take.
Yeah. I mean, really good point there, Yusuf. And I can tell you, and I would always talk about the statistics, right? If you take a pool of 100, so-called offenders at that age, and if you look at the home, what's the situation? But I can tell you, I remember this one time I took my son to play grassroots football, right? And I forgot that with grassroots, then you get a mix of all different kids, right? And at some point in the game, the obscenity started flying. I'm talking kids probably 11, 12 years of all that. And then my son sort of stepped out the field, and I know he just couldn't deal with it, right? But I started talking to the coach a little later on, and then he started explaining. He said, "Look, man, if you see the situation with some of those kids, what they have to go through, right? You almost want to understand, right? And so here brings in the challenge of that same parental issue again. You have homes where this is how the parents talk to the children. So absolutely it becomes just as part of their vocab, but it's an issue that I think will always be there. I mean, how do you address that situation with parenting, right? It is something that is crucial, especially at the early stages for those kids, right? As you said, we're just looking at the symptoms, but we know what most likely the issue is. So how do we, what addressing that? I'm even posing the question now because I see there's an uphill battle.
But
All right,
but
go ahead, Eddie.
but Brent, and I like the fact that we having this free flowing conversation, because too often, and I realize even you did it and even Yusuf did it. And as parents and as men, we tend to, every time we have these difficult conversations, we try to give a disclaimer, because society has become so critical of persons giving speaking honest, right? is that you always feel you have the need to give a disclaimer so that you don't offend anybody. But I think at some point in time, we have to recognize that we have to have some very difficult discussions. And these difficult discussion comes around parenting because I have heard, no matter the topic, right? No matter the ilk of society, whether it's the children and the way and the violence and the smoking and the this and the that and the other, it all stems, right? It all comes back to parenting, right? And we just having a discussion, as you correctly said, around the symptoms of what we see happening in society and the disintegration and lawlessness of our youth, right? Which is sometimes troubling because at the end of the day, it leaves you to wonder, you know, what's what hope do we have for the future? And I don't want to sound so doom and gloom, but the fact remains is that our structure of parenting right now at present does not work. It is not working, and we've been hearing the same refrain for a very long time. I don't know. I've been hearing the same little caveats. People having this to say. This is a reason why this, and we always have these little things, these little antidotes that basically, and we just not getting anywhere. And I would like to go out on a limb here and say, here today, right? Part of the problem right now is our family structure. We are now at a place whereby our family structure is problematic. Our family structure right now is dominated by single mothers, right? And whether we want to accept it or not, right, that seems to lack the capacity or lack the ability on their own to be able to parent, whether it's boy children, whether it's girl children. There may be more difficulties or more challenge depend on the gender of the child because at the end of the day, some things become more natural based on gender, right? And I think it's time, around the discussion is that we have to maybe have a serious discussion as to why. Why have we come to this place, right? Where our society is dominated by single motherhood, right? I'm not going to proclaim to know the entirety of the reason, but I think I have a fair idea, you know. And it's always easy for people to say, okay, well, men are absent or this happens or whatever it is. But I always approach anything like an equation. You cannot address one side of the equation without addressing the other side. If you only address one side, you're fighting a losing battle. So, as much as we can speak on the all of these symptoms, and we need to speak on it, right? But I think in this conversation, we also have to address this glaring problem that for to me that society has become so timid to speak on because it is politically incorrect to say the problem that we have in society now is because we have a society that is dominated by women parenting, right? I am not speaking to why they're not doing a good job, but it is my analysis that this is the nucleus of the problem. Because if you look, Brent, you look at the two parent households whereby you have a father present, you have a mother present, you always tend to see better outcomes. I'm not saying it's perfect. You would always have the exceptions to the rule, but you tend to have better outcomes coming from these kind of family structures. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm hoping you well. This actually sort of motivated me now to go get some statistics on the
Yeah.
percentage of single parent, especially single parent moms in Grenada, because again, those statistics always help you make make a better gauge of especially in the case of this discussion. I wish I had that figure here, but I'm thinking of what's different now as then, and my theory could be wrong, but I think from a digital perspective, more people have access to your children. whether
Yeah.
it's solicited or unsolicited, and that's an issue, right?
Yeah.
Your specific influential groups that may have more influence over your kids who are not even living in Grenada, but your kids they can access your kids through social media. Um, I'm thinking that there are times when there are households where there are financial challenges, but yet still you know the kids still have phones, and they somehow have access to data, right? um, but that what should I say, influential index, or that ability for other groups to always have access to your kids if you don't manage, and that's a parenting challenge. And I even see it in my home sometimes, where I may be asleep and I get up and I realize, hey, well, it's 10 o'clock, the kids should be in bed, but I notice activity on the Wi-Fi. And yeah, well, they're on the phone, but what are they doing? Are they studying? But it's how are those kids being influenced? I remember the days where we had this whole community service, right? We would go visit homes. Presidential, you go to church. Even though they can't make it, you have to go, right? But that doesn't happen anymore, right? I see parents sometimes show up to church, their kids don't even come. But that doesn't mean it's a rule saying you have to, and everybody's different. I had a discussion with another friend, say, well, Brent, you're maybe in a different comfort level. There are two parents, you can do this, you can balance your time. But what about the parents who have to work on specific days to make money to take care of those kids? And I say you're absolutely correct. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they still have to ensure that the parenting brings value where they are not faced with these challenges. And you would always be faced with the challenges, but how do you deal with it? Our kids need to understand that our yes means yes, our no means no.
Correct.
But I'm still struggling with the belief that there are too many influential groups that have access to our kids through social media, and maybe they're doing a better job than us, right? Again, and it could be a negative thing of influencing them, right? So this is something I think we need to manage,
But doesn't that speak to But Brenda, but doesn't that speak to us as parents and the amount of access, right, we give to our kids with regards to social media? Because
absolutely.
because let me ask you this, right? And maybe even Yusuf could chime in on this as well, right? I, you know, children sometimes I feel needs to be rewarded for good work and for good behavior. And to me, children, no matter what, they have access to the devices, whether it is even me sometimes, if I find my daughters, right, or going out of the norm, what I expect, because I always, listen to me, I just always tell people parenting is about being consistent, right? It does not mean that you will still get it absolutely right, right? But it's about being consistent and letting your children understand what you expect of them, right? And the standards that you hold there. So every day when I tell my daughters, I say, you know what I expect of you. They know it by heart. What I'm going to say to them. I'll remind them every day that I love them and all these things. But anytime, because they're children, they will be step out of line at some point in time, you have to take away the devices from them. And so too often, no matter what happened with kids, they still have their devices, they still have access, right? And and to me, one of the things that comes with parenting in this age, you ought to have some level of control whereby, like how in prison you just had to come and do like a spot check, just out of the blue. At the end of the day, I just listen to me. I don't want nobody come and ever tell me no stupidness about, you see, like how you have this American way of parenting and you have to give them privacy or it is. There's no privacy when you're a child. I should have access to everything with regards to whether is your information, because I have to know if you're going down a path that you should not be going. So if I decide today, and sometimes I may not do that, I may tell the wife, I say, watch now, take them device, check them, check the conversations, all these different things, and you have to do that, but we get comfortable as well because too often as parents, We are lazy when it comes to parenting. You understand? I ain't talking about lazy, it's not about work. Lazy when it comes to parenting. We are satisfied with a device taking some of your duties away. You don't want to hear you don't always want to have to deal with. So once, too often, parents are happy once they're not hearing the child speaking or quarreling or whatever it is. Then hearing that, they're happy. They like the sound of silence. And
So
silence to me, is never a good thing when it comes to children.
true. This is where I would say that's why I
Mm.
initially started by saying first this is a reminder to me and other parents because we become comfortable. As you say, you don't want to hear the noise, you don't want to deal with this issue. So it's easier
Yeah.
to chuck them with a device or to tell them go and do that, you know? But not to preempt, based on what you were saying, not to preempt the discussion in terms of what's coming next week, but this is where we're looking at how do we fix it. And hence we are saying using the term missing. So the parents are missing or absent, the school is missing or absent, and all this is piggybacking on when a village used to raise the child or the community. So when we use the term missing, and of course all this later will be backed up with statistics, but I'm just saying when we say missing, we're missing in terms of you have the school, yes, they're going to school, but the role in which they play in terms of managing certain things. So whether they don't want, they are governed by certain rules by the ministry, or whether they don't want to get involved with certain disciplinary matter, or whether it's the parent who don't want to upset certain things. And again, many times we don't understand or we misunderstand parenting and being a friend and being strict. As Eddie you mentioned with respect to privacy, I just spot check to the swear I say I'm a warden. One time, wifey wondered if I'm a drill sergeant, but sometimes I would spot check. I'm like, what are you looking at? Now, sometimes I try to change the tone so that there's a certain level of understanding. So it's not about fear and when dealing with the children, but it's about respect and having that rapport. So I would say, what are you looking at? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I would see they would tell me I'm watching a movie. I say, you know how I am. If I'm asking you what are you looking at, of course it's a movie. I want to know what the movie is and what's it about. Don't
Yeah.
tell me it's a movie. You know how I am. So don't
Mm.
be giving me that. You know how your father is, you know? So
Mm.
I would spot check and to see what are you talking about? Who is that you talking to? So you would do those things. And with respect to, I mean, yes, now unlike before, where you might have one computer, now there's multiple tablets, but still the main computer is in a central place. So you can see what's going on on the screen. The tablets on the phone, the fact that sometimes, as they say, you ain't hearing them, I would say, well, how come you play so? What do you do? How is so quiet?
So quiet.
I would go
Yeah.
and seek them out.
Uncomfortable silence.
Yes, I would seek them out to find out what's happening. Now, I agree. I try to be consistent in terms of do it routinely. But sometimes, you beat that, you know what, you had a kind of a day and you're like, really, I can't be, I gotta be over them like, as the people would say when you're growing up as a slave master or driver, you know? You would like to think that you inculcate or set certain precedent that they would follow. But yeah, again, in terms of how to fix, a lot of us has to show up as parent, has to show up as a society, has to show up as a neighbor, school, churches, mosques, wherever you go, to help deal with that issue. So, for
Right.
example, I would say, well, I could say I'm Muslim, yeah. Now, as you know, we pray 5 times a day. Now, the thing is, and I like the terminology here, whereby every time you go on pray, people say you pray so much time, but it's about reprogramming because you've been exposed to so much during the day. Every now and then you need to be rooted. So I'm using some of that example to say that here, what as parents and as society, every now and then we need to be reprogrammed. We need to check ourselves with respect to parenting, what our children doing, what our spouse doing, what our family doing, to generate that type of love and togetherness. And it's not foolproof, but I'm thinking if we spend more time looking out for one another, it would help. Just as a side
Right.
note, we need everything instant. So even like when the children were younger babies, it's so easy for instant. You get a formula, you put it in a bottle, shake and give them because it's easy. Whether the mother not there to breastfeed or whether you don't have time to physically prepare a substantial meal, it's easy to just shake the formula and give them. So I'm using that as an example. It's easy to give them a device
Yeah.
or send them by a friend or by a movie. It frees us up to do whatever we want. Sometimes watch a movie to do nothing or just to be quiet. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are
It's like
repercussions.
fast food, right?
Yes, like fast food. We ain't have time to cook.
Yeah.
Go and buy that down the road, you know? So yeah. So
Yeah.
that's my take.
It
Okay.
it
So,
fills
Colin,
your belly, but with what? Yeah, go
all
ahead
right,
with
let me
Colin.
let me just jump in here because we have Martin at the back end, and I want to bring him in on that conversation because being a teacher, he sees a lot of the dysfunction among our young people every day. So let's just bring him. Okay, so he disappeared from the back end. All right, so when he pops back in, we'll bring him onto the platform. So let's move on. All right, so now I see he's back up now. All right, so I'm going to bring him onto the platform. Martin, what's going on here? You
Yeah, I know. I keep getting calls. And you know when you're using your phone and you're receiving calls, you know what happens. But anyway, guys, my apologies for being late today. I guess I would have missed um most of the program, but I just want to when I came in, I heard the um talking about prayers and the mosque and so forth. Um, and I always speak about um the Syrian community, right? And in terms of the students we get from that community, right? I'm not sure if I'm correct. A Syrian community, right? They when they talk
No,
about
if
mosque
it's
and
Muslim, most likely it would be Indian, Pakistani, Gujarati,
right,
locals, everything, yes.
So Arabic fair.
right, right. Since I've been teaching, I've never seen one of them in the office for any kind of infraction. And we normally have that discussion in school in terms of the quality of students we get from them and how they operate. As you spoke about the prayers, I know, for example, every Friday they have to leave half day to go to the mosque, and they leave together. Lunchtime they eat together, and they operate as a unit. But when it comes to discipline, I can tell you that I've never had to correct any one of them, discipline. I've noticed any disrespect and so forth. So it begs the question: what are they doing different to what we are doing?
that's a good point.
Well, if I may, being Muslim, this is what I would say. We do not allow as Muslim, I won't say outside influence, but we try to stick to the teaching as best as possible. Meaning, nowadays they would say this is new times, so you have to bring in and adjust to suit. There's nothing like that in Islam. Just as how it was before, so we try to maintain. So you won't find something creeping in that whether you have same-sex marriage or we try to there is no boyfriend girlfriend in Islam as well. We try to negate all that. Now with everything else, many a times people would bring cultural and other stuff into it. But to answer the question, there isn't that much influence of, like I say, outside and changing the doctrine. So the doctrine remain the same as much as possible.
But they are exposed to other cultures in the schools. And even when they are exposed to other cultures, we see them still exhibiting that strong discipline that they would have gotten from home. And then
That's why I say programming.
right,
Because of
but
certain teachings, every now and then you're being more bombarded with what it is to be Muslim and do the right thing.
Okay.
Versus
And
you have
go ahead.
more when you're outside for yourself.
So
you
so
have
does that
more
so
exposure.
doesn't that speak to the same way as parenting though?
Yes, of course, as parenting,
Yeah.
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 I was just going to ask a question, right? Yeah, so it comes back so it comes back to the original point we're making. It's about parenting, because if it is, as you correctly said, Martin, they are exposed to the same thing that their peers are exposed to, whether it's the social media, whether it's the so-called new age of this, and people trying to bend themselves into pretzels, this new this new mold, right? Instead of
Mhm.
us, right, shaping the new trend, right, based on our beliefs and our foundational principles. I think what's happening, they are holding dear to their principles, and it comes back to parenting, right, and it comes back to always being consistent, always reminding your children as to what is important. Yeah, I think I don't
Yeah.
know if so. Sorry, I think
Quick,
somebody was
quick
going to say
question.
something.
Um, Also to add, I know we normally have discussions on single parent, but I haven't seen to see it single parent in that culture. To see that you find that the mom alone is raising the
Ah,
child and so forth. Give
You
me a
see,
minute, sir.
again, foundation
well, well, Matt,
with
well,
with
Martin, I
every
think you missed a very, yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, Martin, go on again.
yeah, he disappeared.
Martin,
But
drop off.
as I was saying,
Go,
parenting, you
yeah,
won't really see
No,
single
Martin
parent.
had asked for.
Go ahead.
yeah. Go ahead, Colin.
Kalangwai.
Oh, all right, no, Martin, there a question
Colin,
was
you were saying
directed
something?
at you, but I think Yusuf, you were saying something about parenting.
Oh, I was saying in terms of parenting, again, foundation.
I was bringing. I brought no.
The
Hold on.
strife is
Yeah.
about marrying.
No.
There is no like common law. There's no like common law or single parent. You marry and you lay that foundation. If it don't work out, you even remarry as soon as. So there is always two parents working as a team, basically.
And in terms of the
So,
support structure
but
that the church and the rest of the family provide, I've lived around families, and what I notice is that they operate as a unit, right? They get support from the rest of them, from the rest of the church and the others.
but Martin,
Uh, give me a minute, hold
Martin,
on.
I want to come in here because
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead.
all right. So Martin has asked to give him a minute, so I will just yeah. Right. Let me jump in here because I think I these are things that I've observed and I know what the issue is. I know what the problem is. We are looking at how the Muslim operate in terms of the structure of their family, and we look at how we operate as as a Christian community. And one of the vast distinction that we can make is that the Muslims, they speak from one or as they from him shit. They read from the same.
One tongue sheet there, one
Everybody
tongue
have
sheet. Yeah.
the same concepts. Yeah, yes, yeah. They literally everyone is speaking in one voice, so that you can go to person A and you would hear what person B would have told you, and it goes like that. But with
Yeah.
our culture, especially with Christianity, everybody have their own opinion and everybody wants to do things differently based off of how they see it, but not how it should be for everyone. And I think that is a fundamental problem that we have. We don't speak on in one voice, and we have people who are willing to deviate once it benefits themselves only, deviate from what is right as long as they can benefit. And I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Colin, I don't know. I don't know if you. Well, go ahead, Brent, because I know you.
Now, I was just saying
Right.
these are all good points, and the bottom line is there is no substitute for good parenting. You just have to find a way to parenting model that works to ensure the success as you as a family. Again, that's important. And again, I always have these discussions, and we were speaking not too long ago. I think there may have been a family discussion about kids wanting to grow up too fast because they see a certain value in things as of maybe adult life or older teenagers, like a 14-year-old, they can't wait to become an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old because of maybe the more value of being at that age level. And we went back to saying, and you can think about it now. Think about all the popular kids in school in your time in school who grew up too fast. Look at where they are now. They just think about it. I don't have to give you examples.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And you see the problem. You can't. And that's a challenge. You can't. You have to take life in stages, and just like parenting is stages and phases, and we have to get our children through those stages and phases so they can understand the repercussions of doing certain things and the benefits of doing certain things. But it all comes down to a good parenting model, regardless of the denomination. And I definitely understand where Yusuf is coming as well, right? It's because there is a structure, and there's a structure that works. Right, but of course now the laws and rules are being rewritten because it's the new times. We can have things like same-sex marriages and almost making it comfortable and acceptable. And we know that's a challenge, right? But it's finding that structure that works.
Yeah, but Brent, and I think that is part of our problem as a people, because I don't know if it is that we are so obsessed with fitting in, right, with these new trends. And I'm here to say, people, it is okay to disagree. It is okay to not accept same-sex marriage. It is okay to not accept homosexuality, right? At the end of the day, it's not everything you have to agree with. And it's not a matter of me calling out any particular type or whatever it is, because you will always find people along the way, you will always find things along the way that you don't agree with everybody on. But because of this new age of social media, is that okay, everybody has an opinion, right? And they figure they can voice the opinion, and okay, we have to. You ever notice how everybody have to right now send out a post, and everybody have to comment on a post, and it's as though we live in this fake alternative reality, right? It's like, look, and as I say, this is not about religion, but Martin might have missed out this. Not might, I know you would have missed out this, because Martin, before you came on, I was saying to the panel that it's time for us to stop tiptoeing around certain conversations because it's politically incorrect to speak to what the problem is. And I've been saying, and what I was saying is that the model that is dominating our society now is single parenthood, right? Our households are being dominated by single mothers, and this is not
just to add to your point. You realize that there's a glorification of the single mother now.
Yes.
To the point where
independent woman,
Yeah, whenever the a young man reaches a certain age and we reflect on his life, we would always say he was raised by his mom alone and a single mother, and we have all these great things to say about it. I'm not knocking anybody.
Yeah.
We do have single parents, single mothers that do a lot, but 9 out of 10 times we don't speak about the bad that comes out of it with in terms of the behavior issues, the whatever comes out of it. That is never spoken of, right? We hear about whenever it turns out good, 1 or 2 times when it turns out good, right? But Eddie, I think that the whole woke society now, I don't think that is having such a negative impact, opposed to the music and the content that is allowed to be broadcast on social media. You see the music and the content, the types of videos, the TikTok and so forth. And I'm sure, Brent, you more tech than I am. That as it is now, China who is the manufacturer of TikTok, has banned it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of European countries that are banning TikTok, right? But here we are, as I keep saying, we glorifying it. Also, Jamaica, which the music that comes out of Jamaica, when we sit down and look at it, the Jamaican government they have banned certain songs from playing on air, on radio and so forth, even on the public transport. But here we have that we are just leaving it to be played on buses, we playing it on the radio, and the thing is that we're playing it and we're blowing out the obscene language or whatever, and thinking that the kids don't know what we're trying to blow. I was amazed a couple of weeks ago when I think one of the Jamaican artists went to a school and was singing one of his songs. And the part of the song that had the obscene language and the sexual content, he stopped and the entire school was continue singing it for him.
Of course, he know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, but we think that when we're playing that on the radio and we edit out the bad word or we edit out the sexual content that the kids don't know.
But Martin, you say edit it out. I have been on public transportation, right?
Public-private.
Transport.
Public-private.
Well, public-private. Yes, you're correct, right? Because there's another conversation. It is, and listening to buses playing music with obscene language, and I still had to give the conductor props, whereby the conductor had to reach out to the bus driver and say, "Oh, you had to reach out to him about you, yo. What going on, boy? Change, Anna." Imagine that.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me ask you. No, remember the busmen are providing a service, right? Right. But why would they have to play that type of music in order for the students to be gravitated to their bus? If they're playing it, that means that the student already knows about the song.
Yeah.
Or they would have already heard the song. So they are only playing it so that they're using it kind of like a marketing. You're marketing the bus with the biggest song system and type of music. But why is it that the bigger question is, why is it that our kids like that type of music?
Because at the end of the day, it's all about access. It's about access, it's about trends and the use of celebrities. How many times, right, Martin?
Yeah.
Maybe I cut out of a different type of cloth. I've had many of occasions whereby it have a certain artist release a song and people are just say pretending it's a big tune because it's a big name artist. And in my mind, I wonder if I listening to the same thing everybody listening to, because in my mind it sounds like crap. You understand? But because it's a particular artist, right?
That's your interpretation.
So no, I'm telling you. So what I'm saying is that sometimes it's because of it's about the selling point. It's who the artist is, and they gravitate to certain artists. And as you say, you look like how you talk about glorifying single motherhood. We glorify violence these days. We glorify we glorify a lot of things that we should not be glorifying, right?
Yeah.
So then when you see our children
glorify and
glorifying, normalizing violence, use of drugs, getting involved in sexual activity at an early age, that a lot of it is driven by the music and the content, right? Not just music, but content in general, whether it's on social media or whatever the case may be. And that is where it comes back. Guess what it comes back to? Access and parenting and what we allow our children access to. We could dance on it as much as we want, boss. And I'm not saying that you can insulate your children absolutely from the world, because we all live in the world, right? But you have to have some measure of control over what your children have access to. And as I say, even though you had to be like the prison warden and come and do your spot checks and come and pick up the phone and say, all right, let me see, I want to see all your messages, and you read it when they're expecting it. You know, no privacy in that. We had to don't buy into this American way of parenting. You understand? About oh yeah, that privacy. You have no privacy. You have privacy when you become an adult and you buy your own house and you have your own job. You understand?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
can't
Yeah.
insulate, but you can prepare, and it's important that you prepare them and prepare them to how to deal with
Yeah.
certain things, right? And
yeah,
they will make
but
mistakes sometimes,
Yeah.
but they need to understand what
mhm.
what are the repercussions. I want to
but
add.
you
Yeah.
go ahead. Look, hold on. Look, Yusuf,
Mhm.
no, and I keep going back to Yusuf and their culture. No,
Ah,
there are a number um of kids that they're born in Grenada. They didn't come from India, they didn't come from Pakistan, and they didn't come from any of those countries. They were born in Grenada, grew in Grenada, exposed to the same thing that our kids are exposed to, and they are more rooted in their culture, meaning the Muslim culture, the Syrian culture, right? Than kids in Grenada that are born here and they are rooted in the American culture or the Trinidad culture or the Jamaican culture when you look at even the music, right?
Yeah.
So they're born here, but as you said, it goes back to the parenting and as Eddie was saying, and I strengthening Eddie point in what you allow your kids to be exposed to, right? Because I remember was last week or week before we were having a discussion in at school, and I was telling the cricket coach that pretty soon Grenada national cricket team will have the majority of the players will be from that culture, the Syrian and the Indian culture, because they are deep into cricket and that kind of thing, right? And
Right.
while they are gravitating towards that, our kids are gravitating towards all the negative. So
Yeah.
it makes the point that we will differ on the religion, on what they believe and the religious belief. But let's focus on the positive that is coming out of their style of parenting. And I keep looking at, and I'll tell you, I've spent the last 2 years sitting and analyzing their culture, sitting and analyzing the kids when they come to school, even the way how they talk, the way how they talk to the teacher. You wouldn't get that disrespectful tone. You talk to them, you correct them, they understand where you're coming from, and it's just a completely different child. You understand? Even when you interact with the parents, yeah, you get that the father is always there, the mother is there. The father would lead because, of course, is a culture that the father is the head of the home. And in general, where it's like they attend all the PTC, they attending all PTA meeting, they're involved in the child life. You understand? But when we look at our culture, Eddie, it's something completely different.
I had mentioned
Yeah,
earlier
Brent. Well, I
too.
know Brent will want to say so. Maybe let the opportunity, Brent.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
no, and I'm listening to those points, guys, and I'm really happy this is coming out. And I just wanted to add, so it's parenting model and the influence of social media, right? And I was just thinking about the example. You remember when a parent assaulted a schoolgirl in the schoolyard, and
Yeah.
there was a
Yeah.
posting.
Yeah.
That parent made a posting on Facebook or wherever.
yeah,
And when I listened, and the other parent replied. So when I listened to the content, right, and of course everybody would have seen that, including the police. What are the repercussions for these things? I know there are a lot of cybersecurity laws, and so I'm not sure all is in terms of legislation if these have been applied, but this is a serious matter. If a
Yeah.
parent can do something like that, the assault was an issue first, but what burned me a lot was even the response on social media with tons of obscenities. I mean, things I've hadn't heard for years. When they had those old village fights in the old time, they would find the worst thing to say about you. But no, the person can't get away from you because they can send that to you, and that's the same problem, the access, right? But that parent doing that is in such a way is telling her daughter it's okay to fight back like that, not go to the police, report the incident, and seek the legal. Laws are for adults. That's why there are laws. It's for the adults, not for children. Find the correct way of addressing it. And then the other parent would have responded on social media. And where does it end, right? So what are the examples? I mean, we know it's a parenting challenge, but the examples of these negative ways of influencing the trend just don't seem to end, you know. But I'm glad you bring all these points because there's so many things I'm learning from this, right? So go ahead. I think Colin wanted to make a point as well.
Yeah, it's just going back to a point that I previously made that I just want to make sure I clarify as what I'm speaking about. Now, the point that Martin is making is very, very important, and I don't want us to overlook that. We have normalized this function in our culture, and we have institutions that are there that were supposed to not to prevent that from happening in the first place. In the Muslim community, they have infrastructure to filter out the unwanted culture that they do not want seep into their culture, and they allow the good to come in. However, in my opinion, our institutions are not playing their role, and everybody is speaking from different hymn sheets, as we say. Everybody have a different way of parenting, and we don't have one model way of parenting that said this is what we subscribe to, and everybody should not deviate from that example. And that is our fundamental problem, in my view.
But Colin, right?
Me.
Now, even Martin earlier on alluded to that, right? That yes, and I know because this was never intended to be a discussion around Muslim faith, but it's more or less a comparison to that of what we know as our traditional culture. And now that we have the influx of other cultures coming into our culture, now we can make a comparison, right? Because we have real-time data to show that, okay, but in a nutshell, to a large degree, the Muslim faith is basically, when you look back at what we back at the olden days, right? At the old school way of parenting, to me, that epitomizes what the Muslim faith is about. It's about structure, it's about discipline, right? And the thing about it is that, as Martin said, these people live in the same conditions, they live in the same environment, access to the same social media, access to the same infrastructure, whether it is governmental, whether it's social infrastructure. It is the same thing. We live in under the same conditions. The difference is that they understand, right, the importance of having boundaries and understanding not everything that is out in the world their children ought to have access to it, right? So some people in this modern world, in this modern way of thinking, would say, well, this is not progressive. This is it's like how they make reference to a lot of the Muslim countries. A lot of people refer to the Muslim country as a regressive community or whatever it is, or there are, whatever type of people, whatever the case may be, right? And I'm not here to litigate what these people do as part of their faith, but the reality remains that when it comes to structure, right, they are far different to us, and parenting, they are far different to us, and we had to take away from this, right? Because I think maybe we have never understood the importance of the job that we have as parents, because parenting is about legacy. Parenting is about legacy. I always hear people talking about, about your legacy, right? Your legacy is when 10 years from now, and Yusuf Jr., right? And Yusuf would have, whether he pass, or Brent would of all we get old, right? And we pass and we gone. Or that is a Martin boy, or that is Brent's son, wherever it is. And when you have now done your part as a parent and give them and equip them, right, with a foundation that they could be valuable members of society, that even when you are now past and gone, your name still live on. You understand? And that is what parenting is about.
So let me show this out.
Yeah.
So for me, although my image stick, so
yeah,
my children go to the SD.
Yeah.
Yes, and was 3, girl and 2 boys. The girl is now in high school.
Right.
And basically, from school, they go to the mosque, to another school.
Mhm.
So school finish at 2:30, 3, 4 o'clock, they go to madrasa, where they are now taught from the Islamic standpoint. So they're getting balance and reference. So it's not about one side. So all that could be part of maintaining the upbringing. Outside of that, we try to, the mother and I try to discipline them as best as we could, try to have them stay out of trouble, show them right from wrong, and understand that whatever they do, they would have to stand the consequences.
So let me just ask you this.
Mhm.
So there's no lineman on the terminal after school?
There's no lineman on the terminal.
There's no lineman in town running up on the place after school?
So before I used to pick them up. Now they take the bus and they go down, go by their grandma, and from there they get ready and they go from 4 to 7. You know?
Mhm.
Outside of that, we try to show them what is what. And as the mother does tell them, she's a crazy woman, and I just tell them I'm a sadist. So you all need to check yourself. You know? Stay out of
Um,
trouble.
It's a
right.
long time I hear. It's a
So
long time I hear that term, boy. Saddest.
Yeah.
so Eddie, as I tell you, because I'm an educator, I normally sit and try and analyze and so forth, right? But just to highlight something here, right? And I'm speaking about structure.
Mhm.
Now, St. Joseph Convent um of the 1980s, 70s, 60s, 2000. There are some things about St. Joseph Convent that has not changed, right? We agree on that,
Yes.
right? Right. Now, the St. Joseph Convent has a tradition of when it comes to how you should behave, about how, in terms of, for example, the lateness, and they have a tradition and a structure which they have stuck to,
Right.
right? So that is why we see now that they are still recognized as one of the premier school when it comes to, you know, academics, and that kind of thing. The things that we hear about, and we there are some things that happen that we don't hear about
Yeah.
as opposed to the other school. But there's a structure there that they have not deviated from, right? To when we look at the Anglican high school, and I'm not bashing anybody, I'm not bashing anybody, right? I know the panel is predominantly Anglican high school, where you find that we deviate from certain things, right? When we look at for example, the principles of the past, and Eddie talk about tradition, right? You hear people telling you about the days of Mr. Ashby, and the days of Miss Mason, and the days of this, and the days of Mr. McPhail, and the other one from Boca, and they keep speaking about those days because persons compare it and say, there was structure, right? Now, the schools that have deviated from that structure, you find that you have a behavioral, a change in the behavior of the students, right? Now, why I would say that, and I do the comparison. Um, in St. Joseph Convent, you have the students at the gate taking register, right? You have the students at the gate, they're taking register. The students do their house notes, and they have their structure. As opposed to other schools, and you see, for example, you're passing Tantine by the tennis court, and it's 8 o'clock, and you see a number of students from different schools in the Tantine area just linemen. You understand? They're just linemen. As opposed to when you see a student from convent who knows that she has to come early because it is written and it goes into house notes or whatever method they have that goes there from when, right? You have that structure, and we realizing now that kids need structure. The minute time there's no structure, you're going to have a problem. For example, I'm familiar with Brent kids. Brent is familiar with my kids. I know Aiden. If I see Aiden in a place, that's Brent's son, where he's not supposed to be, I could pull him up And I could call Brent and say, Brent, hey, look, I see Aiden there. And when I called Brent, I know the reaction I would get from Brent.
Yeah.
I would get a positive reaction that Martin Tanks are calling me. I could call Aiden mom and I could say, look, Erica, look, and I would get, he could do the same for me because of the structure of the school where we came from.
Mhm.
Yeah, Brent?
But you
Everybody there was like a family.
Yep.
But
But
hold on. But can I
yeah,
but can I just ask you this, right?
yeah,
Because you see, you said because of the structure. Structure plays, and I am all for that. But
yeah.
do you but don't you think as fathers and as
Mm-hmm,
men, we have
mm-hmm,
a slightly different approach in the way we interact? I listen to me. There's an unwritten rule among men and among fathers. I don't know. I don't want to speak on behalf of women, right?
mm-hmm,
But I have always tell my friends, once I know your son, your daughter, right? And
mm-hmm.
going down the road and I see anybody trying to commit any infringement, and I don't want to make it sound a bit raw, but I always tell them that fight is mine. And I'm saying fight in the context of, if I see Brent children, somebody trying to take advantage or somebody I know your children, I would jump in and intercept and get involved. And I would expect you to do the same for me. You understand?
Yeah, yeah,
So
I know,
but I think there's a code of conduct and a code of ethics among us as fathers. I can't say that that goes across the board by and large when it comes to all parenting. It may be it's a generation, maybe it's a generational thing. I don't
no,
know.
but
But
the point I'm trying to make, the point I'm trying to make is that, for example, the structure of the private school,
mm,
right? And I want to highlight the private school. The structure of the private school is, we find that the private school parents are more closely knitted, right? The private
mhm,
school parents are more involved in their kids' life. I'm not sure if it's because they're spending money and so forth,
right.
right? So you find that, and I'm speaking of where I came from, which is St. Mary's Junior, and
Right.
Brent was there too. You find that the children, they they are molded different. Yes, we do have the ones that but we're talking about structure, right? And
Mm,
what we're noticing is that because of the family amongst the parents, and I'm speaking about St. Mary's here, because of the family amongst the parents, you find that we form a kind of a community. We don't
mhm.
live it together, but there's a community there which looks out for all the children in the school, even when they pass from the private school and they go to the secondary school, there's still that kind of community and that family that looks out for those kids.
But
You understand?
Martin, right? And
Mm,
I want to I have to play devil's advocate here, because at the end of the day, as a person that has always been, I went to public school, right?
mhm,
And as we make reference to the principles of O's, like the Mason Francis
mhm,
and the Ashby and so, right?
mhm, mhm,
Wouldn't you also agree, right, that to
mhm.
a large extent principles of today have to a large extent have their hands tied? Because and here my rationale here, because I I tend to hear this very similar refrain coming up in a lot of different schools when it comes to public schools, that they there's a lot of control that the Ministry of Education have over how schools operate, and everything has to be sanctioned, right? And
No,
no,
Eddie,
no,
Eddie, hold on. No,
but
no,
here,
hold on, Eddie.
but here's my
Hold on, Eddie.
point. Yeah,
Let me tell you this. Let me tell you
yeah.
this. The same Education Act, and that is what all schools, principals, teachers, and ministry officials are governed by.
Mm,
Right? The same Education Act that was there in Mr. Ashby's time, Mr. Mason time, all of their time, is the
mm,
same Education Act that is there now. You might
mm,
have that they would have revised, and so if you look at the Education Act, they would have revised it about 10, 15 years ago. If I could be wrong, but it's the same Education Act that they all operating under now, with some minor modifications. But what you find is that principals then right? Were more rebellious, if it's so to speak. No, mind you, there's a lot of things that principals did before that was illegal. If
Okay.
parents,
All right.
if
Yeah.
if parents really looked at the Education Act and decided to take the principals to court, they would have lost.
So, for
Yeah,
instance, corporal
because
punishment.
no, corporal punishment is in the Education Act, is always been there. The only changes that they make, it has to be administered in a secure place. It has to be approved by the principal, and it has to be administered with an instrument prescribed by the principal. So no teacher cannot flog a child in front of a class and on their own. It has to be approved by the principal with an instrument. So you can't just take anything and administer corporal punishment. No, it is clear in the Education Act, and it has to be done in a private place. So imagine the amount of students that got flogged in front of assembly. You see my point? It is
Yeah.
the same Education Act, but then we find that no, the Ministry of Education is now enforcing what is in the Education Act in some instance. And we see that, for example, things that principal could have done before, where principal decide that, look, you did it, whatever you did, you're expelled from the school. According to the Education Act, expulsion can only be done by the Minister of Education, right? It is the same Education Act, right? But what you find is that, as I said, principals before, you
Had
know,
more leeway. They had more leeway.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
You have more
So,
leeway.
and now we have become a society that is politically correct. Right? Everybody wants to go to the letter of the law because everybody trying to cover their tail, because we're living in an age of canceling people or destroying people if they don't. So you see, the sad thing about it is that we can't have the best of both worlds. There's like how we like to say, okay, back in the day, it was a very um well, men back in the day. Let me put it this way, because let me put it from a male perspective. Back, we were toxic and we were chauvinistic and we were this and we were that. But guess what? Discipline was at a high back then, right?
Hmm.
It may not have been perfect, but as the old saying, sometimes in an effort to correct things, we throw the baby with the bathwater. You know, so I think sometimes in an effort to change things and to make things better, you have to be careful the changes. You know, don't you're not to change the blueprint. Sometimes building a house is building a house. The foundation is foundation, and sometimes you want to dig up the foundation, and that is what I think the problem has become, whereby we have now dig up a lot of our foundational principles that have worked for us over the years, and now we're trying to wonder why, right? Why
Well,
this new model? Because I'm and I have to keep saying this. This new model of family and parenting that dominates our society is not working, right?
yeah,
Single
Eddie,
parent
you know
is not.
they redefine the family now.
Well, we're redefining everything.
Yeah, they
Just, just, just,
redefine the family.
just the other day, this just was it Friday? Somebody was telling me of something that happened at an institution where somebody was fired, right? And I ain't calling no institution name, right?
Hmm.
Because they misgendered somebody, and I was like, I say in Grenada, that happened here in Grenada. They say, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
because
Oh,
about they and wherever it is. I say, so all that they teach us in school about
mhm.
they, where we use they and he and she, all this is out of all these foundational principles are just thrown out. It's like that was a waste.
So in essence,
Yeah.
I associate with being a 16-year-old. I'm 16,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and you can take me to court and say I'm not, right? So
Yeah.
that's the road we go in.
Yeah.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
my 12-year-old tells me now she's 30 and she's an adult,
It's
and then
Yeah,
delusion.
with it.
Delusion.
yeah, yeah.
Delusion.
I have to go for a few minutes, but I just want to add something on my take. Oh, Brent, I want to tell you the incident you spoke about. It happened in Jamaica last week, where a lady a gang of women, adult women, accosted a school child and administered and ended up beating her with a pot spoon. And she was rescued by a student, had to rescue her while everybody else around was filming, right? And I think they would have
Yeah.
arrested the lady. But gentlemen, I want to just throw this out. You see, when we fail as parents, and especially as men, remember, we are basically guiding, growing, influencing the generation to come. And when we fail and we do a bad job, we are faced with what is happening now in society. We are faced with what is happening now in the schools. We are faced with what is happening now as parents. Now remember, the parents, the delinquent parents know, the delinquent fathers know, didn't come from space. They came from the same society that we are part of,
Mhm.
right? They didn't just drop from the sky. They came from the same society that we are part of now, right? And I've been speaking to persons who can assist, and I'm just going to give you some data. The Granance area now is one of the problem areas in terms of delinquent students, students who can't read, drug abuse, drug use, alcohol abuse, gang violence, right? We have Granance area, St. Andrews, certain parts of St. Andrews. I saw a documentary that was doing and they spoke about certain parts of St. Andrews. Now, the mental hospital right now, the age of persons being administered into the mental Monge hospital is coming down. So you have 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old, even 10-year-old who are there for substance abuse, right? So it's obvious that we are failing, but no one is coming up with a solution. We keep pretending as if this doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. I was saying to one of the persons in the Ministry of Education, we have to start to identify the bad parenting and the delinquent behavior from preschool. So you arm the preschool teachers now to identify, okay, look, this child, the mom is behaving a particular way, the child is already disrespectful at the age of 4, and you put the parents and the child in some form of program to assist them. You cannot help a 13, 14, 15-year-old child when they come to secondary school and try and help them in terms of their behavioral issues. You cannot try and help a father that didn't mind a child for 10 years and try and fix him now. You have to try and have that father be part of the child's life at an early age. You have to intervene at an early age. And that is part of the problem. We're waiting until the tree reach old and then we're trying to bend it when we're supposed to be identifying these problems lower down in the primary and even in the preschool. So a child is coming to a secondary school, and you know in secondary school you have your syllabus, you expect a child to be at a certain level. When a child comes to a secondary school and the child can't read, how is the system supposed to help that child? The system cannot help that child. And we ask the question, why wasn't it identified from since in the preschool? By the parents, by the system, where we could have helped that child, on whatever program. But you see, as it is now, we're leaving the child, we identify the problem, we know the parent disrespectful, the parent, in terms of proper parenting, that parent is not a proper parent. The father is not part of the life, the child is growing up a particular way, the household that the child is exposed to, and we leave that child, let that child grow up and breed in that environment. And then when the child starts to exhibit the same behavior that they grew up around, now we're trying to solve the problem. This whole pattern will continue, and unless we don't sit down and take a serious look at this problem, it will continue to exist. I'm telling you, when I interact with social workers, and they're telling you that the amount of young students in primary school, 11, 12-year-olds, that are smoking marijuana, that are drinking alcohol, and so forth, the numbers are alarming. But how did it get to that point? as fathers, we need to step up, but the authorities need to, identify these problems at an earlier stage. Because right now, I can tell you, trying to deal with it at a secondary level is backlit. The solution to that is backlit. That is what the authority, they're looking at it now. That when you're just an age and you get into the legal system, but can we have a program to prevent them from ending up in the legal system from since in the preschool, right? And that is my take on the matter. I'm not sure if you want to add in, Colin.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
I want to come in here because I think we should probably start to wrap up the conversation. But
Yeah.
I am 100% in agreement with what Martin has just said. It goes back to some of the things. Remember, I talk about institutionalized the
Yeah.
structure.
Mhm.
If the structure is flawed, is the reason why we have those problems now.
Mhm.
The family structure is flawed, is dysfunctional, and we have normalized it for years. One of the documentaries that I did was on Telescope, because I'm from Telescope. I understand the conditions. I was a part of
Yes.
the conditions. That investigative report, I did it. And
Yes.
it brought about the issue of male academic underachievement, but it also shined a light that, remember, I tend not to blame victims for their own oppression. And I
Yes.
said, violence is a symptom of a problem. Violence is not the problem. If you get me, if you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah.
right?
We get you.
And if
Yeah.
we continue to just treat symptoms of something and treat them in isolation of each other, we would never be able to come to a firm conclusion or solution to the problem. So yeah, I will leave you gentlemen to give some closing remarks as we look to sum up this conversation, and we look forward to our next conversation next week, which I hope we would be discussing. Monty,
Yeah,
you should
missing.
missing.
We hopefully get some experts on board next week so that they can address some of those pertinent issues. So that when we speaking for a place of knowledge and
Right.
experience, But I don't know if you want to give Brent the opportunity
Sure.
to give his last states before I
Yeah.
kind of come. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. I mean, it's always a pleasure to be on. And I think the positive of this show is that even though what we say might, help one person for sure, then that's a lot. And it's important that we understand that this isn't meant to be a program where we get feedback and then we have to get combative about it. There must be something positive you would have learned today. I learned a lot today. I must say. I mean, I pretty much was ingesting a lot of the good feedback because it will help me become a better parent. Because the environment there is not changing, right? But what I just want to, reiterate is that parents really need, whether you're a single parent or both parents in a home, the examples and the way you set standards, because children look up to you. Believe it or not, your children look up to you, right? They will remind you one day, well, yeah, but I saw you doing that. They always look at you, so you have to be their role model, right? If a child can't consider you their role model, then who will be their role model, right? So I just want to reiterate that you have to influence them in the best way you can, because it's important for them later on. And that's all I want to add. Looking forward to the future shows, and just want to see continue to have a bright and prosperous 2024.
And Monty?
Solid, yeah. Yeah, I can't endorse, what Brent just said. I believe in that children are what they see, what they consume, right? And sometimes it gets tiring as a parent. It gets tiring to keep hearing the same discussions without solutions. And I think very often it's not that we can't find solutions. I think that there is not the will to find solutions. And I think the solutions are sometimes, to me, is just glaringly obvious. But as usual, as human beings, change is very difficult. Change is very difficult, and we did not get to this place in just 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. This has been a journey, right? And I think we have heard some of these refrains since we were young boys. But it's just that it keeps getting louder and louder, which is an indication that it keeps getting worse and worse, right? So it means somewhere along the line that what we've been doing is not working. And you know what they say about that, this is like downright insanity, doing the same things and expecting a different outcome. So my thing is that we have to stop being worried about being politically correct. Stop worrying about offending any segment of the population. Stop worrying about, you know, pandering to any international agency and having to conform or fall in line with how they want us to be. Because a lot of the models that we're following is not a model to follow. You understand? It's not a model to follow. Right? We I I want to say, just like I want to say hats off to all the fathers like Brent and Yusuf and Martin and all the others that show up every day for their daughters and for their sons and so, and be responsible parents and be parents that help to mold and shape children for the future. I want to say hats off to the mothers that does likewise and sacrifice, and even to a larger degree, hats off to the single mothers, right? That make the necessary sacrifices, because as much as I speak to that of single motherhood does not work, right? There, it is not a new trend, right? But I think what has happened is that there was a different level of willingness for persons, maybe single mothers long ago or before. Maybe there are still some remnants of it now that are willing to make the necessary sacrifices to make sure that their children are model citizens of tomorrow. But there are lots that are not willing to do so, right? They're not willing to make the sacrifices. They don't want to stand the importance that comes with parenting, and these are the things that I have a low tolerance level for, right? There's no absolutes, and I'm not saying that you can do everything right and still things does not work, but you have to put your best foot forward. And on this note, I just want to close and say thanks as usual, Colin. Thanks, Brent, all the contributors that has made this discussion. I think it's more like a rapport, a very vibrant one. I know Colin had some technical difficulties, but I think it kind of gave us a little vibes there that we just flew. It was just like a chit chat, So
And actually, I stayed in the back end,
yeah,
on purpose,
yeah,
because to allow the conversation to flow.
yeah. But it was nice. It was nice.
It was a really nice conversation, and
Yeah.
like I said, I agree with everything that was said today. I believe that this is all in the faith of trying to organize ourselves to be able to tackle some of these problems, and we cannot deal with a problem without first talking about it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the contribution. One of the things, one of the last thing I wanted to say is that one of the very few things I learned from my father, because even though he was in the house, I grew up in a single parent male. It was led by my father because my mom died when I was 6, and the home was led by my dad, who was absent, even though he was present.
Right.
But one of the things that I did learn from him is just by observing him. And one of the things that he said to me is that discipline is not being a yes man. Discipline is knowing when to do something, knowing that it has to be done, even if you don't want to do it. That is discipline.
Yeah.
So if today I let's say I have an exam next week and I really just want to play video games, just knowing that I need to study, I need to postpone my instant gratification to study to pass that exam, that is discipline.
Yes, agreed.
But a lot of the times we tend not to, we tend to to want instant gratification. We want it no, 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 no.
Mhm.
You know. So yeah, and I appreciate having to learn that lesson as to what discipline is, and I believe that if men and or parents instill that into their children, that'll be very helpful in growing the type of students or children that we want to become model citizens in society. So
Was
with
that a
that,
good lesson, though? It was a
yeah,
very good lesson, though.
yeah, that was a very good lesson. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the very few that I learned from him.
Yeah. Yep. You grew up in the right phase. You didn't grow up too fast. I can tell you, all the guys I know who were the popular guys in school that grew up too fast. Trust me. A lot of them ended up where they shouldn't be. But
Oh boy.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
All right.
It's
All
a
right.
pleasure.
Take care. It's a
Okay.
pleasure.
Thanks, sir.
Great.
All right.